Welcome to Quantum Era of Cybersecurity, what it is and what you need to know. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jen Sweet, and I'll be helping out with the webinar today. We hope you get a lot of value out of this session and enjoy the content, whether you're watching this live or on demand. Today, we have two exciting speakers, Nilufer Erdebil, founder and CEO of Spring2 Innovation. Nilufer is a TEDx Ottawa speaker and the author of the international best-selling book, Future-Proofing by Design. She has dedicated her career to helping organizations achieve remarkable advancements through design thinking principles. And Bruno Couillard. Bruno is the CEO and co-founder of Crypto4A Technologies, Inc., a leading innovation, crypto agile, and post-quantum cybersecurity. With over 35 years experience in cryptography, key management, and quantum safe technologies, he has designed and implemented advanced cybersecurity systems for both commercial and military use. Previously, he co-founded Chrysalis ITS and served as the CTO developing Luna hardware security. Earlier, he worked with the Government of Canada as a cryptographic evaluator and security architect on the Canadian Cryptographic Modernization Program. With that, I'm excited to pass it over to Nilufer and Bruno.
Thank you so much, Jen. Welcome, Bruno. So happy that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me over here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, before we get started, I want to put out a poll to our audience. You and I had a really great conversation before this, and I'll get into how we met a number of years ago as well, too. But before we do that, we have a poll question for you. November 2025 is the 30th anniversary to the month of the first browser, Netscape. Do you remember installing your first Netscape? Yes, no, or what is Netscape? It's kind of crazy that it's been 30 years. We'll give folks a few more seconds to chime in and vote. November 2025 is the 30th anniversary to the month of the first browser, Netscape. Do you remember installing your first Netscape? Yes, no, or what is Netscape? Okay, 10 more seconds. All right, this is interesting. So quite a number of people actually remember installing their first Netscape, and then some don't. I personally don't remember it, but I do remember using Netscape back 30 years ago, and we still have a portion that doesn't know what Netscape is. So yeah, so Netscape was the first browser that was out there. And I remember being in university and being in a computer lab and going on the internet and being able to see things that I didn't even realize were out there. Do you remember, Bruno, your first time using Netscape and installing it?
Absolutely. Yes, I was a bit further on in my career at the time, but in 1995, I'd already been visiting the Netscape offices in Silicon Valley. And I remember going there, and it was this place where you walk in. It was the early days of the dot-com. So everyone had a foosball or were running around with all sorts of toys. They had catering services for food. You could bring your dry, laundry. They would dry clean all of your laundry. It was a weird, very weird environment. It was the early days of the internet sort of boom, and to attract, employees and people, companies would compete with the most impressive display of capabilities that it would offer, food catering, chefs, and so on. Yeah, it was a pretty amazing place to go. And I definitely do remember my first Netscape experience. It was the beginning of the digital era. That's what it was.
Yeah, pretty amazing. That was only 30 years ago when we look back at it.
Yeah.
And you and I met a few years ago, and then I got a chance to reconnect with you, I think last year at the quantum conference at Carleton University as well, too. Um,
Correct.
you've been in the crypto space for quite a while. Um, but before we get into all of that, I'm actually kind of curious if you might be able to explain to some of our audiences that may or may not understand quantum or quantum crypto. First, let's start out with what is quantum?
Quantum is the ability to harness the powers of something called quantum mechanics. So there are mechanical, or that it's actually physics more than mechanics, but the idea that we can use very advanced knowledge about the deep physics of the universe, the behaviors of atoms and electrons and so on and so forth, and use that as our compute element, as a capability to make computation, realize different computations. So in today's world, we tend to use electric circuits that are ultimately based on CMOS concept, like silicon capabilities. And we use that as ones and zeros, and we use bits as the unit of compute in our computers, in our interactions. Everything is a one and a zero ultimately. With quantum, there's a shift that's taking place. We now have the ability to use the physical uh, uh, state of the matter that we're dealing with, and we can now use all potential values between 0 and 1. It's called a qubit, a quantum bit, which tends to have way more compute capacity than a 0 and a 1. So instead of the two possible states of a bit, you now have every possible states between a 0 and a 1 in a qubit. What that does ultimately is it gives us way more power to compute things that are way more complicated. So a quantum computer that harnesses that sort of state of matter is therefore capable to make calculations that are almost impossible for classic computers because of that very foundational change in the elements we use to perform the computations. So this is very simplistically the main difference between quantum technology and existing classical technology. So that's the first step between the two sides. And there's more, but I'll stop here.
Yeah, I love that definition. For those that might not have done coding or might not have done electrical engineering in the past, it's that quantum basically allows you to do things a lot faster.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is great in one respect. And in another respect, there's some challenges with that if not everybody has the same technology and capabilities. And so maybe we can get into that a little bit now.
Yes. In essence, this ability to use this ability to use the state of matter as the fundamental elements of compute gives us three different branches. We can extract or use this in three different approaches. Typically, we subdivide quantum technology in one of three major or buckets of capabilities. So you've got usage of quantum technology for compute or sensing or communication. So all three of those are kind of using this characteristics that we're now able to harness of being able to use the quantum physics at its raw foundational element and to use it for compute, sensing, or communication. Where things get quite interesting is when we use this technology for compute. We have the ability on paper, and we're working towards making it a reality, the ability to build something called a quantum computer, which at the base uses quantum technology and quantum mechanical principles. Now, these machines are not to date and not likely for many, many years to come going to replace our normal laptops or watches or your small computers. They're not that breed of quantum or computers. They tend to have a very finite set of use cases or algorithms they can run for which they excel. And they don't just excel, they absolutely blow away any competing classical machine. One of these specific area where quantum computers are expected to be breaking records in terms of their ability to break things or to compute things is in a very interesting area called public-private key cryptography. This is a place in the world of cryptography where I'm from, where ultimately what we've been using are very advanced, complicated mathematical problems. They're math problems, very fun to, once you understand them, you go, wow, this is a good idea, cool idea. And the base of the problem or the base construct is I can create this pair of keys, a public one and a private one. And they're kind of linked in this mathematical trick. And if I generate this, I automatically have my public key. And the public key, even if you have it, you cannot reverse into figuring out the private key. It's just an impossible trick. But if I have the private key, I can easily, like super easily, create the public key. So it's this one very easy way to go from private to public, but pretty much impossible to go from public back to private.
And these are already in place right now.
They've been used since Netscape came out in November 1995. This is ultimately this mathematical problem has now been the foundation of our secure internet since 1995, 30 years.
And it's been working great up until now.
Perfectly, too well, in fact. It's been working so well that everyone has forgotten about that trick. It's so deep in the layers of security. It's at the very bottom of our internet security. It's the internet base relies on that as the foundational element of security that we've now been building layers upon layers for the last 30 years. That is where the quantum computers arrive on the scene. So a classic computer would typically take 30 or 10,000 years to go from a public key back into a private key. In essence, I can publish my public key and I'm not worried about you using the absolute most powerful classic computer to break that secret. Like you cannot do it in your lifetime. The nasty thing about quantum computers is they actually have the ability to break the public key into its private component within about a minute or two. So if I give a quantum computer, here's my public key, poof, it magically knows what my private key is. In essence, that completely shatters all hopes of privacy, integrity, authenticity that we've now been using for 30 years. So that's the challenge.
So it basically means anybody can hack into our computers or into the software that we're using.
So ubiquitous that it's every one of the above plus plus. It's everywhere we use public-private key pairs today that this becomes an issue. Now, you're going to ask me, well, where do we use it? Chances are it's easier for me to tell you where it is not being used than to list all the places where it is used. And again, think of, I'll just use a few. If you have a legal document that you're doing a digital signature so that you become the owner of your home, or you have a contract that's now been signed using a digital signature, that is one usage of this concept of public-private key pair. That's one. If I've built a smart component, a smart product, and I call it smart something, smart home, smart car, smart cities, anything that you think of that has the word smart XXX behind it, the idea is someone sells you an object today, a product, and over the life of that product, I'm going to send firmware updates to maintain the capabilities of this thing over time. You could buy your Alexa, you could buy your Siri, you could buy whatever you'd buy today that will get more and more firmware updates. Every time that happens, the company that has designed the product takes the new code, the new capability, the new smarter capability, and it performs something called a digital signature. The reason you want to sign this new code is that those devices that exist out there in the wild, they need to understand who's sending me this new capability. Is it you, the designer, or is someone else telling me to change my code? So every time you have this interaction, there's a digital signature validation of those that signed it and sold you the product. That product has to be able to constantly validate the origins or authenticity of that firmware. And the idea there is we use digital signature again. So code signing is a massively big challenge. Think of you've got all of these smart objects, but you also have things like a jet engine, a satellite, a communication tower.
Cars.
Pardon me?
Our cars as well.
Cars. Think further into a few years from now, you may have an insulin pump. You may have a heart monitor. You may have a pacemaker. If these things are firmware updatable, they're smart.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that whoever sends the update is actually the company that manufactured that device, especially if it's in your body. You'd want someone to be validating the authenticity of these new updates. So digital signature, which is a foundational element of all our smart world, is that one cryptographic capability that's at risk or disappears, becomes obsolete if you don't change the cryptographic or the mathematical challenge soon enough. And that's the quantum computing and the quantum era. That's where there's a race at the moment, global race, between those that are building quantum computers, those of us that are trying to maintain the security of the cyber world that we depend on. We're trying to keep up and maintain the security of those systems to ensure that they are quantum safe. And that's the dichotomy there. On the one end, we're super excited to see what the quantum computing age will do, but on the positive, but on the negative, we better have up our game when it comes to cybersecurity and all security around the banking system, transport systems, critical infrastructure, name it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everywhere.
And you mentioned opportunities. What are some of the opportunities with quantum right now? And in the next 5 years, maybe?
So if for those that are currently starting a career, you know, if when I was way back, you go to school, you're learning complicated things, you're trying to cram a lot of knowledge into your brain. The intent is to get out there and use that knowledge for as quickly and as long as you can, because that's how you extract value into your own education. And in the last 10, 15, 20 years, if you're seeking to determine what sector might be of the best way to use or best return on your investment on training and learning, chances are you might pick AI. That's definitely been up in the air, and everyone talks about AI. Chances are you've potentially also looked at quantum computing. There's a lot of research happening, lots of green fields. There might be also things that attract you from a cloud and the deployment of computers in a cloud environment. And you'll hear lots of people talking about the full stack developer, the human interface, the beauty of designing something that humans will use and what makes them, want to use this. So there's a whole cadre there. But for the past 25 years, I'd say, cryptography has been relegated to, it's a technique that we've learned back in the 70s. We've applied it in the 90s. It's been known, it's been solved. We moved on. No one cares about it. However, if you're in the process right now to trying to figure where will there be a high and super high challenge that would get me extremely busy for the next many years, I can absolutely assure you that cryptography and post-quantum cryptography and in all the fields like banking, transport, name it, everything needs to change. And you're dealing with this super complex matrix of challenges. So the opportunity from someone trying to figure what their life is going to look like, I guarantee if I were a younger guy today, I'm on the end of my career. If I were back in the start, I would guarantee that's where I would be absolutely for sure.
I love that. How fast is this change coming?
Oh, so think of how quickly Chat GPT came to the scene. One morning you hear nothing about AI. The next day you almost wake up and everything is AI driven and agentic AI and so on. It's taken off like crazy. And these days, it's rare that like you have, I'm sure you're buying toys, and if you're shopping for Christmas, the Christmas toys, guaranteed that lots of toys are now advertising AI somehow inside the toy itself. And it's everywhere. Every place you go, it's like you've got this AI thing in front of you. It's a bit reminiscent to the days of the dot-com era back in the 90s, where all of a sudden you would see a dumpster truck going by on the highway, and it would have a web advertising on it. You'd go, really? Yeah, it was everywhere.
Yes.
So right now we're into the AI hype cycle. I guarantee that in a year from now, it'll be the quantum hype cycle. It's basically a year away.
Oh, wow.
Where we're going to start to hear quantum, 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 quantum everywhere. It's going to be quantum this, quantum that. And it's one of those things where in order to keep up with these massively big revolution from a technology point of view, you have to keep up with, there's a lot of hype. So you need to be able to sort through that, what's real, what's fake kind of thing. But behind it, there's a lot of real massive changes taking place. Like, I don't think anyone would disagree that today AI is a transforming vector of our lives. Um, we see it, we hear of AI. Every tool we basically use these days have some AI capability. You turn on any any of your Word or any of those tools, and it pops up with a, hey, do you want me to help you out with my AI?
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. And in that sense, it's the current space we're in. Quantum is the next thing. It'll be very much on the same path. It'll be quantum driven this, quantum driven that. We'll advance all sorts of capabilities. It's a different way. Ultimately, think of AI is ultimately a different way to build a program. You use up a model that's been trained using data, raw data. You create these model and you apply that model going forward. It's sort of a mathematical sort of process. And that mathematical process runs on traditional computers. Now, if you think of it, AI runs on traditional computers with lots of a tweak on, NVIDIA does a better CPU than Intel. So that gives them a bit of an edge, but it still uses ones and zeros.
Yeah.
So we've gone from cloud using ones and zeros to AI, which uses ones and zeros with bigger CPUs. But the next step, which is that of quantum computing, does not use ones and zeros anymore. It has the ability to do way more compute than ever before. So when your computer is trying to figure out the number of permutation between all these bits and ones and zeros, the quantum computer makes it happen at much faster speed. So the next phase of evolution will definitely bring that compute ability into the fray. So I'd say a year or two from now, it'll be quantum computing that you'll hear all over the place.
I can't believe it's that soon. And you mentioned compute, sensing, and communication.
Correct.
And so that's a lot because when I think about all three of those, I always go back to how it applies in my life. And I think the car is probably the most prevalent one that has all of them in there because there is compute power in there. There's a bunch of sensors in there
Correct.
and the communication aspect of it too. And so it sounds like quantum is going to catapult it to
Yeah.
a place
And
that we haven't even dreamed of.
no, and that is I mean, if you think of what we currently see from an AI perspective, just take the deep fake videos that you see today available on the internet, and you look at the quality of these images or these short videos, and you sit back and you think, oh boy, that's some of them, unless you're told, you easily could think of them as being real, that they're real people, but they're not. And that capability that we see in front of us today, just rewind the clock 2 years. You would never have imagined that in 2 years' time, we would have that sort of quality that you could emulate or simulate a waterfall or a fish swimming in a pond to the quality, to the degree that we're now unable as humans to make a distinction between what's the real thing versus the fake. And now it's harder, and it's only going to get, like, let's just advance another 6 months, and good luck even trying to make any of those distinctions left. There won't be anything that our brains will be able to capture, to pick up, that will allow us to make that call between real and fake. It'll be toss a coin. You might as well toss a coin to figure out which, if you had to compare A and B.
Yeah.
That's how crazy things have gone in no time. So that's the interesting thing about technology. Ever since the advent of the internet, we used to have technology was kind of confined to labs, like state actor level labs or massive corporation. They would hire the best and brightest. They would bring them into their isolated corporate labs, and that's where technology would advance, and eventually would come on the scene, and would go, we didn't see that coming. But with the internet today, everyone communicates. Everybody is talking all the time. The instant someone in India or China or anywhere on the world picks up on a new idea, boom, it's an immediate, it helps everyone immediately. So there's this the world at large is one big lab where everything advances at that speed. So the speed of advancement in technology has become sharper and much faster because of this global effect. Everybody is involved. And I suspect that AI itself will help many human beings to accelerate their kind of thinking, because they'll take the mundane task that they would normally waste a lot of time on, ask the AI to help them out so that they can move on to more complex things that AI can't do at the moment. So if anything, it's going to continue being really fast and accelerating faster is what I suspect. That seems to be the trend we've been on for the last many years. So
Absolutely. I have a question here that I don't fully understand, so maybe you can help me with some of the acronyms here. Someone is mentioning that they're loving the discussion and the content. Most of the literature that they have seen is around PQC, focuses on TLS. Should we have the same concern level around SSH? Can you help us decode what that means and then
okay.
help with the response?
Wow, that's in our world, we create something. There's cryptographic algorithms, and we use those cryptographic algorithms to on some higher level construct that we call protocols. Protocols tend to pick and choose different cryptographic algorithms to make up the security building blocks they need to establish communications. There are two major protocols. There are many, but two major ones that allow a computer to connect with another computer. I've talked about Netscape from at the beginning here. Netscape was the first time that there was a protocol at the time called SSL, or Secure Session Layer.
Right.
SSL was invented by Netscape, and the invention there was to use the SSL and the cryptographic bits in here and in the browser to create something called a tunnel that would secure if you're sitting here at the browser and I'm the bank. So I'm a bank here and you're the browser. And if you give me your password, only you and I have access to it because of the tunnel that was created. Yeah. So SSL eventually evolved, and it's now known as TLS, or Transport Layer Security, I think, or I may not even have the proper acronym, but ultimately it's the evolution of SSL. So now TLS, which is the protocol that's really widely used in browsers to servers. So if you sit behind your browser, your Chrome, Firefox, your Safari, or any other variants of browsers, and you go online and you do some shopping or you're browsing, chances are you're going to see either a padlock or some indication in the top address corner that says you're connected right now using a secure connection. That's a TLS connection. Now, to establish that TLS connection, what we did from inventing this protocol, what we used was we came up with a two-step process. Step one, we need to establish a key that's unique to the client and the server. And we basically send packets that go back and forth between that machine and that machine, and that establishes a session key. This part gets to be finalized using the authentication portion. In essence, you're sitting here at the browser, you've got a key, and right now you're hoping that that key really is between you at the browser and your server, say your bank.
Yeah.
But to guarantee that you're actually talking to the bank, you demand that the bank takes its own certificate, think of that as a passport, and it will send you its certificate and sign the entire process so that you can check that, yes, it's my bank. I authenticated the fact that the entire process was performed using appropriate cryptography. And I'm now satisfied that that key that I've got is with my bank and nothing else in between. So that's been going for 30 years and it's evolved, it's been improved. But in essence, you've got this concept of a session key that gets authenticated. And if everything goes well, then you start having a conversation, transactions, and so on. Now, if I record the entire session, if I'm sitting on the sideline and I'm not able to break the cryptography, but if I'm able to record every single exchange, every packets between you and your bank, and I store that away, if what you've been using is classic cryptography, at one date in the future, when I do have a quantum computer, I'll be able to take that recording and use my quantum computer to break into that session and read all your transactions. So what we have done is we've added a tiny element or a trick into our latest TLS protocol that makes the key that's created a combination it's basically a combination of two types of algorithm. The classic one that we've been using for 30 years, but we've now added a second element, which is itself what we call a post-quantum cryptographic algorithm. And I'll talk about that in a second. But by combining these two things, now I've made it impossible for someone that records and wants to break it later to break that, because it's not possible to break that post-quantum cryptography. It is meant to be unbreakable by you if you have a quantum computer. So we've done that for TLS, and we're currently doing it for SSH, which SSH is a slightly different protocol that exists, kind of similar in its reasoning. Like you sit down, you're trying to connect to a computer, you need to establish ephemeral key that will be authenticated, and then you can have a session. The only difference, well, there's multiple difference, but at the protocol level, both of these tend to operate on a very similar principle. Create a session key, which is ephemeral, authenticate it so that you can use it for the entire session. Now, that's what we've done to secure these protocol against breaks. And the question was, what's this PQC thing versus non-PQC, I guess?
Yeah.
In 1994, one of the world's really smart person in the world, the gentleman was from MIT, and Shor, Dr. Shor, came up with an idea. So 1994, he said, if ever I could get access to a quantum computer, I would run my algorithm, the Shor's algorithm, and that algorithm on this quantum computer could break classic cryptography.
Right.
In 1994, the world went, really? Huh, who cares? Moved on. Because there was no one had a quantum computer.
Yeah.
However, over the years, that concept of building a quantum computer became more and more of a theme, more and more of a reality, a potential reality, to a point where in 2016, NIST came out and said, all right, we need to change the cryptographic layers that we have now been using for 20 years at the time. They said, we need to switch to a new generation of cryptography that is referred to as the post-quantum cryptography, PQC. These are different mathematical constructs with the notion of a private and public key pair, but the math problem that is at the base of these mathematical algorithms, very different than the classic one. The idea is that problem, even if you have a quantum computer, you cannot break that problem. You will need 10,000 years. So it'll be in the same category of unbreakable thing. Now, NIST posed that point in 2016. They went to the world, all the smart cryptographers, and said, we need help to bring new challenges, new problems to the fray. And they've given a year to these people. So November 1st, 2017, there were 92 candidates, if I recall. And for the past month, it basically took 5 years of work to distill down all of these 92 candidates to ultimately selecting 4 in July 2022. These 4 had to then go through a standardization process. Last August, the 13th of August, 2024, 3 of the 4s had finished their standardization process. The 4th one is still in process because of its complexity. So now today on the planet, we have new algorithms that exist, that have been standardized, that have been accepted, that have this moniker referred to as post-quantum cryptography. And these are the 3 that we can pick and drop into SS or TLS or SSH. We're now dropping them into certificates and X509 and PKI. We're dropping these everywhere we can in our protocols. So we have the crypto. We've been told, community has been told, do not ever think this is going to be it. We're going to do these 3 plus forever kind of thing. So be crypto agile in your designs. Pick those 3 to start with. And just so you know, we'll have more. That's kind of the message there. And those 3 have now been embedded into the various protocols that exist. One large body of engineering that's been going on since the 70s is called the IETF, or the Internet Engineering Task Force. The IETF is thousands of people on the planet that contribute their time in advancing the protocols we use for connecting, for our videos, for our coding, all things. And these folks meet 3 times a year around the globe. 2 weeks ago, they had a big meeting in Montreal, Canada, and it was a IETF. I think it's 140th. I believe it was 140th meeting in Montreal, and they have many sessions where someone takes TLS and they say, we're going to inject these cryptographic capability here. We're going to change a PKI here. We're going to do this there. And there's probably in the 50 to the hundreds of different protocols that are currently evolving. So SSH is definitely on that track, TLS, and so on. So that's kind of the lay of the land in terms of algorithm, PQC, and protocols. I'll stop because that's a lot of
Yeah,
things.
it's so much information. And I kind of want to pull back a little bit because normally on this webinar, we talk about the human side of business and of technologies as well too. And this means a lot of change for people. And I think that's why first of all, I love technology. I love knowing and understanding what's going on and what's going to be coming up, especially leading edge wise too. And then the other factor is that it's going to have a big impact on how we do things and what IT organizations need to be thinking about. And again, it's a change and a shift in how people are doing things and what they're thinking about. And so, can you talk a little bit about the human side of the
Yeah.
technology? Some things people should be worried about, shouldn't be worried about, and then how can people change?
I think this is a very interesting point. As I said, the usage of cryptography in our day-to-day life goes back to roughly, for most of us, to 1995, November 1995. And we somehow, miracle kind of thing, found the one cryptographic algorithm that had itself been invented in 1977 called RSA. That algorithm, once locked in place in the TLS or SSL world of the days and PKI and so on, solved so many problems, always using the same algorithm. So for the last 30 years, we've become extremely lazy in the crypto space because typically you need to solve a problem. You go around, we'll use RSA. Plug it, it works. You have another problem. Oh, let's use RSA. Plug it, it works. So the world of cryptography has become one of more or less stagnation. Now, I wouldn't want to insult anyone. I'm in that world too. So I'm doing that on my own against myself. But it has not been an evolving at speed type of thing. Very much super stable, very consistent, conservative, and so on. The humans that have played a role in that game at the beginning in the 90s, those humans were the absolute stars of your IT crowd. They were the most, like, their careers were on a super upswing and so on. They were the ones picked to actually work on this cryptographic thing. They were, the stars. Roll the clock forward 30 years. Those folks that are still left in that space tend to be, they're not all the same, but tend to be closer to the end of their career. Like, look at my gray hair. I'm at closer to the end than I am from the beginning because that world has been fairly stable and did not attract the younger generation. There was not a lot of new cool things to deal with. That's changing now it's almost a 180-degree change that's happening as we speak. So somehow we need to somehow figure a way to attract massive amounts of people back into that space and you've got two generations here. You have a generation that's at the end of their career. They've been doing things for more or less 30 years of the same thing. So change is not necessarily what they're looking for. And you need the new generation that need to have this, this ability to switch quickly and be crypto agile in their own mindset. So I find that to be an interesting sort of transition that needs to happen in this field. So the human beings that are currently involved have got to also be able to realize that we need to bring in the next generation. I'm doing the same here in my company. I can tell you that the new hires tend to be, their age average is usually 23, 24, 25, because we need fresh new blood, fresh new thinking in this space. And this is a massive challenge
Yeah.
for many companies around the globe. So the human factor in this very fast transition is indeed a challenge, not just on a few companies, but it's a global thing. Everyone needs to somehow do massive campaigns to recruit new folks, and they're rare.
Yeah. I love this aspect of it because especially right now and with someone with a child in university studying software engineering, there's a fear that organizations don't want junior software developers anymore. And so for those folks, the best place to maybe head over to might be the quantum cryptography space from the sounds of it.
And I'm always trying to incite other companies to do a lot more about their co-op program, to bring in their myths, the young engineers and young technicians that are trying to make a career, bring them on board, let them learn in your own environment what this world could look like for them as a career. Because you get to learn you get to pick the brightest minds right there. They get to also figure out if that's the thing for them too. And I guarantee if they like what they saw and you like what you saw, the match is a pretty phenomenal match. Your batting average on hiring these people when they come out at the end of their schooling is closer to 100 than nothing, right? So I always encourage people, build up a program where you hire those co-op students, you bring them into your fold, you're trying to educate them on the things you do so that they can get a sense of who you are and you can get a sense of who they are. And that's a phenomenal combination as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I know I love this conversation. Uh, and we've had a chance to answer one question along the way. Um, I would love to talk more about this, but we're at the end of our time. So thank you so much, Bruno. We didn't even get into what you and your organization do because there's so much to cover in this. And
Yeah.
I know our audience is really appreciating it. If you guys want to hear more about crypto, please put in some comments in the chat and we'll try to get Bruno back here and talk a little bit more about quantum as well too. But the combination of people, technology, and change is where we love to be working in. And if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the human side and solving challenges from a human perspective, we have a bunch of courses coming up in the next little while, including our certification and our level one. And then we have some resources on our website as well. And so if you do want to know more about either design thinking or cryptography, just drop us a line in the chat and we'll make sure that we'll get some more information to you. I think this was amazing, Bruno. I love the way you explain such complex challenges and problems out there, and super appreciate you being a guest with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and hopefully your audience enjoyed some of it. And I'm happy to come back if there's a desire for it.
Yeah, it sounds like there is a desire for it. A lot of people say excellent refresher on cryptography for those that have been around for a while. And then it's also lots of fascination around it too. It's a highly informative session. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining us. And sounds like we'll be having Bruno back in the new year. For those that are with Spring2 Innovation, we are celebrating our 14th year, and there is actually a contest out on our social media, so please check it out. And the other thing is, we're not going to have a webinar next month, but we will have one in January around mindset. So watch our socials and our emails on that as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you guys in a little while. Bye.
Take care. Bye.